Perhaps the most interesting matchup that's going to be happening in the Texans versus Bills game is going to be DeAndre Hopkins going up against Tre'Davious White. I think the winner of that matchup could honestly really dictate a large part of the game. And let's just jump into what Hopkins does that makes him such an effective player. We'll start off with this play where that's where he is on the screen. And the reason I'm choosing this game to talk about is because in this game he went up for the most part one-on-one against Stephon Gilmore. And a couple of times Gilmore got the better of him, but I felt like for a large part of it, Hopkins was able to win this matchup. And this was a great example of how he was able to do it. It's going to be just a quick slant route. So this is already a tough route to beat in man coverage if you're Gilmore. I mean, this is definitely a route that favors the wide receiver in this situation. That's why you run this route. It's pretty much never going to actually work when it's in zone, but when it's in man coverage, it's a pretty great route. So that's why they're running it. And, good call here because it is man coverage. Hopkins does actually have a slight tell. I mean, pretty much what he always does when he's running a slant route like that is he'll stick an arm out right before he does it. So basically, if he sticks his left arm out, he's going to go to the left. If he sticks his right arm out, he's going to go to the right. He pretty much always does that. He doesn't really even try to hide it. So that's one thing that you can look at if you're Tre'Davious White and say, okay, the second I see that hand come out, start running in that direction. At least you can try to do that maybe once or twice to try to get an interception, perhaps. Maybe you don't want to do it every time because you don't want them to catch on, but that's a slight thing you can do. Because of that little contact, Gilmore is now flat-footed. He's very far back, and there's going to be a ton of separation right after this point. Hopkins gets wide open. I mean, we're talking about a defensive player of the year candidate who is just getting burned by Hopkins. That's what Hopkins is bringing to the table. So you're going to have to do some things to beat him. And this play is another great example of how it's just so difficult to beat him. Once again, that's where he is. It's a one-on-one matchup. And once again, it's going to be a slant route. So good situation for Hopkins. Now, in this situation, what did they tell you? They tell you to use the sideline as an extra defender. Because the reality is you can't throw it over the sideline. And your whole goal as a defender isn't to guarantee it's not going to be a catch. Your whole goal is to try to make it as small of a chance for it to be a catch. There's always going to be a chance that the play will be able to be converted, especially in today's NFL. But you just want to limit those odds as much as possible. It's very similar to how in basketball when you're playing defense. You're never going to guarantee that you'll be able to stop them, but you can give yourself a pretty good chance that you will stop them. So that's what you have to do if you're a defensive back. But anyways, so one thing he is doing is he's kind of doing that. I mean, you notice how he is sort of bailing a little bit. He's letting Hopkins get up a little bit to the top half of the screen more so than he is. So he is trying to push Hopkins further up in that direction, which is smart. But against this Texans team who loves to run a lot of slant routes like that, you have to be ready for a slant route, and Gilmore just wasn't here, and once again, Hopkins is easily able to get open and get another conversion. That's a tough play, but at the end of the day, you do have to find a way to make sure that you know what you're doing. I mean, listen, this is literally, this is like a boss level at this point going up against Hopkins. He's one of, if not the best wide receiver in the game. He probably is the best wide receiver in the game, and that's what makes him so effective is because he can beat you over the middle so quickly like that, and when he does, then maybe you have to try to cheat a little bit in that direction, but if you do cheat in that direction, he can beat you over the top. So he is just incredibly difficult, but you do have to make sure he doesn't beat you over the middle first, I think, and then maybe just accept the fact that he might get one or two big passes. That's what I would do, although at the same time, obviously, that's definitely a risk because they could potentially convert a deep pass or two. I think, though, if you're Tre'Davious White, you just have to trust yourself that you can get back and knock a ball away if that's what happens. I just think that you can't give him space. That's really what it comes down to, is you can't let him beat you easily. You have to make it difficult for him and just accept the fact that there's a chance you could get burned because, again, this one a perfect example. Once again, it's him versus Gilmore, and that's going to be his route. So this route, not that difficult of a route, actually. This is the route that Gilmore should be able to cover, I think. This is the 2nd down and 8, and after the ball is snapped, if you look at Gilmore, he is totally just trying to not get beat here. For whatever reason, he is convinced that this is going to be a go route, and honestly, it's possible that that's even what the play was designed for, and then Hopkins just changed it on the fly. I'm just saying that's possible, but either way, this is just going to be a disaster once Hopkins cuts in. He just gets wide open. I mean, Gilmore, what are you doing? You're basically a safety on that play. That's not how you should attack Hopkins, and obviously, this guy is, in my opinion, it's either Gilmore or White. Those are the two best corners in the game right now. And he's basically just allowing Hopkins to gain some yards. You just can't do that. So really, I mean, that's what you're going up against. That's the degree of difficulty you have if you're Tre'Davious White. You have a guy who will beat you, and he can beat you in every way, especially over the middle. You can't give up space. That's what you have to make sure you don't do. But for White, I think he actually might match up pretty well against Hopkins. Like, on this play, so he's going one-on-one against Amari Cooper. I'm choosing some Amari Cooper matchups because Amari Cooper is a good route runner. Obviously, he has nothing on DeAndre Hopkins, but he's kind of a DeAndre Hopkins light, I guess. You know, he's diet DeAndre Hopkins. Definitely not on that level, but he's definitely probably not even on the level below it, but he's still a good player, and they do have somewhat of a similar play style. The one thing I find very interesting is if you look at this, it's kind of similar to that play I showed you earlier, but if you look at what White is doing compared to what Gilmore would do, is that White has his legs a lot further apart. He is a little bit turned over a little bit more, but he also has his right arm out, and he's ready to create some contact if Cooper is running in. So if Cooper were to cut in, this would not be able to work out too well. And especially just think about it in terms of if that was Hopkins there. If Hopkins tried to do the swipe that he always does, now White's hand is in the way, and potentially he can just knock Hopkins' hand out of the way, and then he can easily know where the situation is going because he's slowed Hopkins down, cut further in, and make the play. Cooper tries to get open, but he's just not going to be able to. White stays with it the whole way and knocks the ball away, so really just a good play by White, and that's what I'm talking about when you use the sideline to your advantage. You have to have a plan if there is going to be a cut to the middle of the field, and White does have a plan. Maybe his plan might not work against Hopkins, but maybe it will, and it looks like he at least always has that in his mind, whereas Gilmore did not when he went up against Hopkins. This play is another very interesting one. This is a goal line situation. It's once again a one-on-one matchup with Cooper going up against White, and it's a fade route, and we've seen DeAndre Hopkins make these catches before. I mean, this is the bread and butter of every single offense, is when you get inside the 10-yard line like this, sometimes it's worth it to throw a fade route. It's a low-risk, high-reward situation because the chances of it getting picked are very low. The chances of a touchdown are somewhat high, so that's why teams love these types of routes in end zone type situations. But again, when Cooper does cut in that direction, White is just with him the whole way, and White probably had an idea of this is probably going to be a fade. I mean, for one thing, it looks like he actually had help over the middle, so that, again, that's also a way you can have a plan. If you know you have help over the middle, you don't have to worry about the middle too much. On the first play that showed you with Hopkins, there wasn't help over the middle, so you that's not a plan. But for here, there is a plan over the middle because he has help. He can make sure that he's staying deep, and he's just having great coverage right now. There's nothing Cooper could do on this play. There's just no separation for Dak. I mean, you know, you talk about basketball, about trying to make it as small of a chance for somebody to get open. I mean, literally that would have been like a 1% throw right there. You're just not going to convert on that. Sure, we have seen DeAndre Hopkins and Watson make some 1% plays before, but you know what? If they convert a 1% play, you're okay with that. That's just what you can live with. However, while I said that there are ways to beat DeAndre Hopkins, at least in terms of ways that you could go about trying to beat him, there also are ways you can beat White. I mean, White is not a perfect player either, even though I do think he is very good. I think the key thing, just right off the bat, is DeAndre Hopkins is 2 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier than White. So, size could probably come into play, and White, he can get pushed around a little bit. Like, watch on this play. That's where Cooper is, and this is a slant route, so this is something that, comes into play with what the Texans like to do. And right after the ball snap, Cooper's just going to push White and then get open and be able to make a catch. So, in a situation like that, people could argue that that's offensive pass interference, and it is. I mean, that kind of is, but at the same time, we all know the refs don't like to call it on offensive players too often unless it's egregious. Yes, that was past the one-line thing that you usually say you can't do it past one line, but that would be kind of ticky-tacky. Refs don't like to call those. So if I'm Hopkins, he always does that hand swipe. Maybe go even a little bit further and just push him around a little bit because you're a bigger guy. Use your size to your advantage. Especially on like a third down, you'll accept the occasional penalty call if you can also get the occasional third down pickup. So that is definitely something that you should also use to your advantage if you're the Texans. Use Hopkins' size. Again, Don't go overboard. Don't knock him to the ground and get a flag. But use the size a little bit. Use some hand fighting. Push him around a little bit. You're a bigger guy, so use that to your advantage. But I mean, yeah, so that's what I think of this upcoming matchup. It should be a really fun matchup. We actually have a couple of good corner matchups coming up this wildcard weekend. We have Tre'Davious White going up against DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. And then also I'm going to make a video about A.J. Brown going up against Stephon Gilmore, because that should be another really interesting matchup. So be on the lookout for that video. And also, I plan on making another video about Zach Cunningham later on and how maybe the Buffalo Bills should go about attacking him. So, a lot of fun stuff to talk about previewing this wildcard weekend. Should be a lot of fun, but yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for watching.